Hello and welcome to the... I put a little extra punch in that, Hallie.
Yeah, you did.
Welcome to the Red Mountain Community Church podcast, where you can hear conversations with the people of Red Mountain Community Church as we figure out pursuing Jesus together. Each episode highlights what God is doing in someone's life or a specific theme in light of what God has revealed in the Bible. I'm Peter Franson from Spirit Blade Productions and your fellow seat warmer at Red Mountain Community Church. My co-host today is Hallie Carl, our pastor of women's ministry. Yes. Hallie, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Is this like as we record this, Thanksgiving's about a week and a half out, and then Christmas after that.
Yeah.
And I know that the women's ministry always has like at least one big thing going on. Is this like a time of the year that's like stressful or exciting, or like tell me like the mix of emotions?
Yes.
Yeah, all of those things.
Yeah, it is. We are having our women's Christmas program on December 3rd. Did I say dinner
again? I'm sorry.
I don't know. We're calling it like a swear jar, but we're not swearing. It's just if we say dinner, we have to no, I'm just teasing. But we catch each other all the time. Because it is a different event than the women's Christmas dinner was.
Sure.
But it's still a lot of planning and logistics. And so, yes, November is very busy for Janetta and I. Janetta is the administrative assistant for women's ministry. So, and personally for me, I have a birthday in November and my son Isaiah has a birthday in November. So then adding to Thanksgiving and all of that, it's just a busy month for us. And so, stressful. And we also just lost Lee's mom. So we had her service on Saturday. So it's just an interesting November for us this year. Lots of feelings of really good things, but a lot of really hard things too.
Yeah.
So yes, the answer to your question is yes.
Oh my
Stress, joy, excitement, all of it.
That's a lot of life packed into a tight ball.
It really,
It's very densely packed life.
That's probably why my neck hurts so bad. Oh, no. A tightly wound ball is sitting right in my shoulders. No, I'm just... God is so faithful and he works so intricately in all of the planning steps, even the doors that get shut. I always get excited when a door gets shut because I think that's something he doesn't want us to do. And he's opening up something else.
At least it's clear.
Yes.
You get a sense of clarity.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I just love holding it, the event with open hands and saying, okay, what do you want? What do you want the women to experience when they come? So it'll be cool.
Well, I'll tell you something that you're about to experience whether you want it or not.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
And that is what is apparently an irresistible question. This is I guess last time I asked a question to my co-host that was under the category of, I didn't know these were called irresistible questions. I don't know where Arian's getting these. Okay. But apparently this
is this one of those weird things I have to pick between?
She said this time the irresistible question is, and it's like, irresistible. Okay. We got a name for it now.
All right. So, irresistible.
What is the one fact that you know that makes other people say, how in the world do you know that?
I saw this on social media for our church, and I was like, do I know anything that other people don't know? I'm not sure that I do.
I'll bet you do. I could think of something, at least a category. For you. It's got to be baking something or other, right?
Well, sure. Yeah, okay. Peter, I should have thought about this one before.
Oh, sorry. I didn't. Well, I'm not supposed to. I don't think I'm supposed to tell you.
No, you're not supposed because you like to see the pastors squirm.
A little bit. Yeah.
Okay. That feels right. Okay. A fact about baking that people might not know that I know. If you are making a pasta dough, you're going to knead that dough until you can push.
Knead it to what?
Not N-E-E need, gotcha. N-E-E-D need, with the K, where you're kneading dough with your hands. Okay. And you knead it until if you push it in with your finger and it bounces back, that's when you know that it's ready.
Oh.
So, and that's really with almost every bread dough or anything.
Okay.
You know you're done kneading. A lot of people do what's called a window pane test for bread. So they'll lift up their bread dough, and if they can pull it apart and kind of see through it without it breaking, it's ready. But I just tend to use my finger, and if I press an indent and it bounces back, it's ready to go.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, actually, now that I'm talking about baking, I could give you like a lot of different. So thank you for helping me, because I do know a lot of probably useless things for most people that are interesting to me.
I don't even think very often about the fact that pasta comes from a dough. I thought it just kind of came from like is there like a pasta tree or something?
No. It's a semolina flour, so it's different than like a bread dough, and then there's egg in it. And when you mix it up, it's a much more coarse feeling dough than like bread dough, because semolina kind of feels like cornmeal.
Okay.
Have you ever felt cornmeal or made like cornbread? Okay.
No.
All right. So maybe someone out there knows what I'm talking about.
You know, the Jiffy box.
Yeah.
That's what I use.
Okay. Yeah. No, that doesn't exist in our house. But then you have to rest that dough before you, for pasta.
Okay.
It has to rest it like about a half hour before you can roll it out and use your pasta cutter and cut it. And then you hang it on a little pasta tree and it dries a little bit. And then you just barely boil it for a couple minutes, and man, you are rewarded for your hard work. Wow. It's amazing.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometime we'll have you and Hallie over, and I'll make homemade pasta and fresh bread.
I think Hallie would.
Lots of carbs.
I think Hallie would enjoy watching that. We watch Hallie and the boys when we have Netflix. I get it now and then to do reviews, and whenever I have it, they'll binge some of that British baking show.
Oh, great British baking show is the best.
And so since you brought it up on the show months or years ago, whenever that was, I have now seen at least one episode.
Excellent.
Sat through, I should say, because I will have my little PlayStation Vita and I'll play video games sitting next to Hallie while she enjoys it.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of make my little snarky remarks now and then as I'm, saving the galaxy.
Absolutely. For sure. We need you to do that.
But I see some of the appeal. It's just not a good thing for me to watch when I'm trying to avoid carbs.
Oh, see, I never avoid carbs, so it's great for me.
I wouldn't have guessed that. I seriously wouldn't have. Man, you make me a little bit sick.
I love carbs so much. It's basically my love language, that and books.
I think for me, on this question, what's the one fact you know that makes other people say, how in the world do you know that? I mean, it's like you. You kind of realized, there's actually kind of a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
There's a ton, like, just because I'm a huge dork for like video games and nerdy stuff. So there's so much that I actually have to be careful. Like when I strike up a conversation, like somebody maybe has seen a Marvel movie, because everybody's seen the Marvel movies. And so I can connect with them on some level there, but I have to be careful that I don't go too deep. Because I start getting out the nerd hat and like, if you want to talk about superheroes, I can really go in.
Yes.
So I got to watch for like the eyes glazing over.
Yes.
I would say probably about like half of my knowledge easily would be things that people would say, "Oh my gosh, how in the world do you know that?" So
are you a Star Wars fan?
That's a complicated question.
Okay.
I would say that I love the world that George Lucas created.
Okay.
I don't particularly have any strong affection today.
Okay.
Compared to when I was a kid. Today for the core movies themselves. Okay. But I have definitely enjoyed that world and would just like different types of stories to be told in that world.
Okay.
That's way more than you want to see. Congratulations. Thank you for not glazing over. You're a pastor, so you're a good listener.
We have massive Marvel and Star Wars stuff in our house. So both our boys, but Isaiah especially is like a massive geek. So you can talk to him about Marvel and he will understand everything you say. Yeah. He will know all the alternate universes and all of the stuff.
Nice.
And then Star Wars, I was going to like say some geeky things to you that you might get, but maybe you won't.
I might or might not. So the minutia I don't really, of Star Wars, I don't dig into as much. I'm much more of a Farscape guy.
I know some minutia there.
Oh, I bet you do. You learn it from pop culture nerd osmosis.
Yeah. I love it.
All right. Well, on a totally unrelated topic, what's this in the script? apparently you can message us on Instagram or Facebook with suggestions for fun things that we could do or talk about before the interview. So if you didn't like this, then let's see you do a better job.
I was going to say, it's your fault if you didn't like it. Give us something good.
Give us your stuff to talk about.
You did say do or talk about. What do you mean do?
Did I say? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, what could we possibly do in the podcast?
Send us your challenges. Oh, crap. Ow, dang. I just totally banged my head. I threw back my head in joyous laughter, and that's how I was rewarded. Getting thwacked on the head by the corner of a IKEA bookshelf. Dang it. Oh.
Poor Peter, are you okay?
And I'm sorry for you gentle souls that heard me say crap and clutched your pearls, because I know it's a church podcast. So anyway.
I'm just going to keep laughing over here.
But coming up next is a sweet woman who you would never even hear a mild word like crap from.
And she wouldn't laugh at you when you hurt yourself like me.
No, she's a much kinder nicer soul. But that's Carolyn Walker. We had a great conversation with her about just a few nuggets of the rich life that she has lived. So here's that conversation to share with you now. Well, Carolyn, thank you so much for taking time out to talk with us. I've really been looking forward to this. I want to start by just kind of getting a snapshot of who you are, kind of the stage of life that you're in, and your family.
Okay. Well, I have 5 children. My son is a pastor in California.
Okay.
My daughter, my oldest child, is who I live with now. Her name is Joyce. And then John was next. And then I had Becky. Becky lives with Joyce and I as well. And then I had twin girls, Jean and Joan.
Okay.
And they're my youngest children, and they're already 67 years old.
Okay.
So.
And your husband's no longer living?
Oh, no. He passed away about 13 years ago.
13 years ago. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So I've been a widow.
Yeah. And you said before we started recording that you came to our church not long ago, like it was just months ago. Is that right?
Yes, that's true. We've only about a couple of months. Yeah. I went through the class with Hallie.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Which was really special.
What class was that?
That was our precepts on the book of James.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Amazing.
Yeah. All right.
Carolyn was awesome in there. It's really cool to have the long life experience and hear such wisdom on just the truths and principles of James. So it was great to have her in there.
It was good for me to be
good.
So rewind backward in that life and tell me when you came to faith in Jesus and just sort of how that came about.
We attended a little church. We've always gone to church. I have a huge, wonderful heritage in my life for our Christianity. And I was 8 years old when I decided to, at altar call, then the altar calls were you walked forward and sat and knelt at the altar, which I did. I was 8 years old. And the journey has been marvelous from 8 till now.
Wow. So just kind of like virtually all your memories are as a believer, it sounds like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing.
That is wonderful. I remember someone once feeling like for a while they used to think that if you don't have this great, amazing like aha moment when you became a believer, that it's like kind of disappointing. But then they had their own kind of aha moment about that and thought, how dare I think any less of having become a believer since my earliest memories because of all that I am spared of in life and all the richness that I'm blessed with as a result of being raised in that kind of home.
So very true.
So true.
So how did you become, we established that you just moved here a few months ago. How did you specifically get connected at Red Mountain Community Church?
We had been looking since Joyce lived here a long time, but she had just moved to this home where I'm now. And I don't like to miss church. And so we began to search every Sunday. We would go someplace. We'd look on our phones and get an idea. And we visited one that was really nice, but they were getting ready to build a big church.
Okay.
And I came from a big church, and I don't care for that. It's too hard to get acquainted. So then we visited another, and then another. We visited probably 5 or 6. And we were going down the list of the churches, and on the phone, they're listed. And we said, let's try Red Mountain. So we tried Red Mountain, and his sermon was so special because he talked about Jesus. Lots of places don't talk about Jesus enough to suit me. That's anything that leads you about Jesus is what I want to hear. I know there's vast subjects around him, but it's still important to have him as the center. And so, of course, that happened. We enjoyed the pastor. I joined the 3 of us, my 2 daughters and I, went to the pastor's meeting.
Oh, nice.
And that was so special. And to meet Sarah, who I was also in class with.
Yes.
She's a delight, and I call her my Sharon because I have a Sharon, a granddaughter Sharon.
Okay.
So she would be my granddaughter here.
That's sweet.
She's a very sweet lady.
Yes.
And so we really enjoyed meeting the pastor at an ice cream social, with some of the other people in the church.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. But I've really, really enjoyed the sermons and the fellowship. I enjoyed Sunday, not this Sunday, but the Sunday before, a pastor stepped in for him.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that was Alan, right?
It was Alan.
Yeah.
And it was just like a gift from God because one of my daughters is extremely diabetic and pretty advanced.
Okay.
And we're anxious to have her go because that is his subject. It was so obvious during his sermon. He talked a lot about that disease.
Yes.
And so then we found out that this wonderful doctor, and he's a PA in that office, so we're making efforts to get her up an appointment with them.
Cool.
That's wonderful.
That's the story of Red Mountain. When the first visit, we said, this is the church. We were looking for where God wanted us. That's the most important thing, and that's where I felt this was where we were directed.
Yeah. I want to hear about your husband. You said he passed away 13 years ago.
Yes.
So how did you meet him? And when about was that?
Well, Johnny, I didn't know this at the time, but when I met him, it was in a Foursquare Church in Ventura.
Okay.
And his brother was a pastor and a missionary and was there at that church. And so I met Johnny that way.
Okay.
And he engaged my girlfriend, and she broke up with him. So then I was there. He was 24, and I was 17.
Okay.
So, but it worked out just fine. We went together for 6 months and got married.
When about was that?
Boom.
In 47.
Okay.
1947.
Okay.
He had been a prisoner of the Japanese for 3.5 years.
Oh.
He was in the Philippines, actually. You have to go back. The Philippine Islands was where Johnny was taken or sent.
Okay. And that would have been before you even knew him?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I know his history because I've lived it. But
Yeah.
he he fought for maybe 6 months or so before the Japanese took over, captured them.
Okay.
He was on the Bataan Death March, which is about a 60-mile march through the desert heat of the Philippines. So they ended up with no clothes, no shoes, because they walked them off. It's so hot.
Wow.
And so he spent then 3.5 years in different places. They were down to 65 pounds. The Japanese fed them a rice ball a day, about the size of a softball. That was their main menu for the day, each day, and they worked from morning till night, wherever he went. He built churches, he built bridges and whatever, and they were 65 pounds. They all looked like skeletons. And there were hundreds of them that were captured in that march, and 70,000 died. But he didn't. He was determined he was going to live. They weren't going to beat him. He used to say he developed hate because if he hated them enough, he would stay alive. And so he did develop that hate, but that's part of our story because that hate continued for 50 years. Even through our marriage, we didn't even know, we were not even aware of this going on, but that was an actual fact. We hated the Japanese. Well, in all war, it's not fair to hate the people. They don't want the war at all, just like we don't.
Right.
But that is what happened. And so then God touched our hearts and said, no more hate. But so we were called then we joined WWII.
You know what? I actually want to go back to that moment.
Okay.
When you talk about God touching your heart and saying no more hate, can you kind of like expand on that a little bit?
Yes. When we went, we were called to Japan. That's part of where the hate was. It was called there at home. And then we realized that we needed to do something, so we joined WWII, which is Youth with a Mission.
Okay.
For adult mission. We're called mission builders.
Okay.
And so in that calling, we went to WWII in Hawaii and found out about the program in Japan.
Okay.
And so when we were signed up and we were called to Japan to begin building churches and to get rid, he thought we were going to find the Japanese people to say they were sorry. And God said, as we were just arrived there and were sleeping, they had little twin beds, and that's where we stayed until we were sent out to build churches. And in the night, the Holy Spirit wakened me and said, this is not what Johnny's going to do. Johnny's going to say he's sorry for the years of hate.
Wow.
Well, I woke him up and I said, Johnny, the Holy Spirit just told me that you're going to have to say you're sorry. And he says, no way. And went back to sleep.
Yeah.
Got that backwards.
The Holy Spirit
Yeah.
now said, you will either do what I ask. If you can't forgive, I can't forgive. That's scriptural. That's a little scary. But we are demanded to forgive. And so he said, his message was, if you can't say you can forgive, I can't do anymore. You're going to have to say that you're sorry. And he says, okay, if that's the way you put it, that's what I will do. And so for the 4 times we went back, was our goal was to say we were sorry for the years of hate for those precious people. We learned to love the Japanese. Even he learned to love the Japanese people because they aren't the war. They're people that need Jesus.
Yeah.
The percentage in Japan is 1% for Christians. It's such a dark, dark place. And Satan has total control of that nation. So we pray that the Holy Spirit will open that up and allow the people to know the truth.
Wow. So you said it was about 50 years after he'd been in the war. So what's the math on that? Is it the 90s sometimes?
Oh, don't look at me for math, Peter.
91 was our first trip
91.
over.
Wow. Okay, that was lucky. I got really lucky.
You did. Way to go.
Wow. So it must have had just. I'm so interested in this because I mean, for I think a lot of us, the period of World War II and even in the years following that, it's almost like fiction to all of us that are younger because these are just stories we've heard. We've seen attempts to recreate these things in movies and stuff, and so it all just kind of blends into that category in our minds of kind of almost fiction. And like for me, my context for Japan most of my life, I'm a big fan of video games, and Japan makes a ton of video games that I've enjoyed. And so that's kind of my context for Japan. But to hear that you guys visited there, and in the 90s when they were making some of my favorite video games, you guys were in the 1940s, even as you were visiting in the 90s. That was like that was the history, that was the context for you.
Yes.
So it's really just really interesting to hear and amazing how God worked in that situation. He would have to do the same thing to me.
Yeah.
I can't fathom that. I can't fathom that. So I want to hear from you about what it was personally like for you to be living during World War II. Now, it sounds like this would have been before you met your husband.
It was.
But you were still, in America, I assume, during that time.
Yes.
And just kind of like the closest we've come to anything like that would be like 9/11 and the aftermath. But that doesn't strike me as coming even close.
No,
to,
very different.
So tell me about what it was like.
I was young. I was 16 when the war ended.
Okay.
So during that time, I longed to do something for the war effort. And I was too young. They didn't let us kids do anything. And so, but I lived in Ventura. And so that is on the coast.
Okay.
And actually Japan came over and one time with the submarine.
Submarines.
And there was an attack on an oil. They didn't get it. They were unsuccessful.
Yeah.
But it was in Goleta, which is just about 25 or 30 miles from
Oh my
Ventura.
gosh.
And we had all of our lights had to be blackened, street lights, and all of our windows and lights facing the ocean were black.
Yeah.
And then we had air raid where we were
Like
taught
drills.
how to hide.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we really were aware of the war, even though we were so young.
Yeah.
And we'd ride. They'd ring the siren would go for our tests, and we would be in the church and we'd run and hide under the stairs and things because you didn't know if it was real or not.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I have that experience. A lot of people in America would not have done that, but because we were on the coast like that, we were quite aware.
Yeah. Were you aware enough at that age that you had a fear that anticipated death and that possibility, that very real possibility?
No,
No.
I don't
Okay.
think so.
Okay.
No, all of it almost was like a game to us. So it wasn't a game, and we had the classes in school. The kids had to climb under their desks, and we all had a rule of what if had this happened.
Yeah.
And so it was very real.
Yeah. But it sounds like to at least some degree, your mindset, you were protected a bit from a full depth of awareness of the potential consequences of the war at that time.
Yeah, I did not live in fear, and I refuse to live in any kind of fear because I think it's wrong.
Well, I do too, and yet I am fearful about so many things.
Yeah.
Are you? No.
Yeah, I'm just a worrier. Yeah.
I will not entertain fear, not at all.
Those are the kinds of nuggets that you just like truth bomb out during, Bible study. And you're like, wow,
Well,
to not have fear and to have that be a choice you've made through so many of the experiences and all of the loss that you've endured in your life. It's a phenomenal display of faith is what it is.
I have lost my brother, both of my sisters, of course my mom and dad, but they were older. Well, Daddy was 54. He wasn't older.
That's very young.
Of cancer.
Yeah.
My aunt was 33 when she died of cancer. People that I was close to, those are people that... And then I've lost my brother had cancer. My daddy had cancer. So that's an ugly word.
Yeah.
It's an ugly, ugly disease.
It is.
You've I'd like you to school me a little bit, because you've been through so much, and you talk about refusing to fear. What are some things you've done or choices you've made, either actions you've taken or places you've taken your mind in your battle against fear? What does that look like?
Ooh, I'm not even sure, because I simply will not entertain it.
Well, that in itself is instructive. That you just move your mind to a different thought, or
I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. It doesn't matter what is thrown to me. I'll deal with whatever I have to deal with, but I will not fear it.
Wow, that is a gift. That is a gift.
And it comes from the God.
Yeah, that's right, because it tells us that God did not give us a spirit of fear.
Did not.
And I think that's instructive too, just to be thinking about the fact that how many times Jesus would instruct to not fear or fear not, and actually that's the whole Bible, but to know that doesn't come from him, that when we feel fear. So whether it's from the enemy or our own flesh, it's one of the many thoughts that we can take captive and make obedient to him. Not saying that's easy, because I fear a lot too, Peter. You and I are in good company. We both want to be like Carolyn when we grow up.
Yeah. So so this is a very broad question, so you can answer it however you want. Because there's so many different things in your life that if we had more time, we could just drill down and unpack, and make a whole episode about any one of those things. But I guess speaking broadly, with all the things that you've been through, that specifically you've kind of shared or touched on in our time, how would you say that your faith has been shaped or impacted by some of those really hard things that you've gone through? What's been the result that God has left in your character and in how you are shaped now?
Probably one of the hardest things I can share. One of the hard things. I had a baby that only lived 12 hours. He was a full-term baby. And his name is Johnny Marvin. And he'd only lived 12 hours, so he was a precious little child that looked exactly like his daddy.
Oh, and his namesake too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that was a really hard time. And I think I shared in class about going to a church that we were attending at the time. And a lady wanted to know where the baby was. And I said, so God took him home. And she says, oh, what did you do?
Oh, my God. What?
And so it was like I was slapped in the face. It was really hard. I graciously didn't say anything to her. I've evaluated that on my own, and no, I found nothing. That was God's choice. That this was His child, and it wasn't a punishment to me at all. So that was good. But I have been thankful for that experience, because it says in the Bible that where your treasures are, that's where you're going to want to go. And I believe that fact that the baby was taken to heaven changed my life. Because who knows what I would have been or who I would have been? I can't know that. But as a result of that, my focus has always been, I will do nothing that would deter me from going to heaven. So my life has been directed to walk towards heaven all my life. Now, that does not mean that I have been a perfect person and walked alone.
Sure.
There's been all through my life different things where you learn another lesson. But always in a lesson, you can learn. And so that's what I search for in any kind of difficulty. What can I learn now from this? Because the Holy Spirit will show you something. He's very faithful.
Well, Carolyn, I'm so glad to have met you, and I'm so glad that you are here and part of our family now. And thank you so much for taking time to share with us.
Yes.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure. Wish I could talk more about Johnny. He was my life, and he had so much that he gave.
Well, let's close our time with hearing a little bit about Johnny then.
Yeah.
What were a couple things that were just really special about him that come to mind?
He was so loving and such a wonderful daddy to all of his children. They all adored their dad. And so he was just a mighty prayer warrior. He loved God with all of his heart. And it was so evident in his life. So I think that's probably says it all.
Yeah.
He was just such a good person. People loved to hear him pray. So we had a wonderful life. 62 years of wonderful.
Well, I'll look forward to meeting him.
Yeah.
Yeah, you will one of these days. He's up there taking care of our baby right now.
Right.
Well, thank you again, Carolyn. Really appreciate your time.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, there's a lot that, like I said, even in just what little she shared, there's so much of her life that we could touch on. And so I guess, as I always ask, what would be one thing at least that kind of jumped out to you and made an impression on in our time with Carolyn?
I was really struck the first time she told me this, and then hearing it again today, how much hate can grow and develop and fester and take that bitter root in our hearts over such a long period of time. And especially when it feels like it's like a righteous thing, like, hey, I've suffered a lot at the hands of, whatever it is that you're hating. And then how Jesus just so sweetly spoke truth in that moment of like, no, you're not here to expect them to apologize to you. What you are responsible for is your heart, and your heart is not in a good place with me. You've held on to hate for image bearers, whether or not they were right in what they did, and how he woke Carolyn up to say that to her. And then
wait, I thought it was Carolyn that
I meant God.
Oh, God woke. Yeah.
God woke Carolyn up and is like, "Hey, you need to help Johnny get this." And then he's like, "Yeah, no, I'm not interested."
Yeah.
But then by the time that Johnny woke up, he was like, "Okay, I just love that unification too in their marriage of being able to say, "Hey, God is sharing with me this thing. He wants to take this burden of this bitter root in your heart. And not only does he want to take that from you, but he wants you to be freed in that forgiveness and be able to offer that as this gift." And so that is just profound. I've had some situations in my life where I've had to forgive, and they've been harder things. And I know for me, the freedom I felt when I forgave in those moments, it was almost the same freedom I felt as the moment that I came into a relationship with Jesus. I felt renewed. And so that's just really amazing to me, especially given Johnny's experiences as a POW in Japan or in the Philippines during the war. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, kind of on a related note, just as a different angle, well, as we record this, it's just, the day after Kyle taught out of Micah and just kind of made the observation there that in the most difficult things that we experience, that there is very often something that the Holy Spirit wants to use in that to shape us.
Yeah.
And And just so hearing about, how God worked through these horrible situations in Carolyn's life, the various ones,
Right.
I think is encouraging to me. As I mentioned, I'm a worrier.
Right.
And so I have a fertile imagination, and so my mind is always wondering, well, what could happen to me,
Right.
And I'm only 43. I could experience a lot of the same things that Carolyn did at some point in my life. I have no idea what's coming. And so I've been meditating on, I think it's 1 Corinthians 10:13, just talking about how God will always provide with temptation that we experience. He will provide the way of escape.
Right.
And despair is a sin. Yeah. And so my fear is, could I go through something so horrible that I would give in to despair? But there's a promise in Scripture that with all temptation, God will provide the way of escape. And so that I've been meditating on, and just hearing Carolyn's story, and then hearing what Kyle brought out of Micah on Sunday.
Right.
It's something that's God is just kind of working in different angles, I think, in me right now, and just kind of affirming in my mind the truth that whatever we do go through, God is going to, He's promised that He's going to meet us in that somehow, in some way, and provide us with an avenue that does not sink us into despair, but instead leads us into something that He is prepared for us.
No, that's great, Peter. So good. And I think too, when you think about, I think an encouragement for listeners that are young is to not overlook someone that's older and think that they have nothing that they can offer you or that would be relatable.
Yeah.
Just how excited Carolyn is to share herself with whoever she encounters is such a beautiful thing. And there's so much to learn from the wisdom of life experience, and especially the fact that she's been walking with Jesus since she was 8. I mean, we're looking at 80 some years of following the Lord. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So just an encouragement to young people, just to look for those people and maybe just go up and strike up a conversation, because you're going to learn some cool stuff.
Yeah. Or at the very least, if you find yourself in a position where it would not be difficult to listen or get into a conversation with somebody. I think one of the hardest things, because I'm such an introvert, is when someone is significantly older than me, I know that they in their most formative years have lived in a very different world than I lived in.
Yeah.
And so the way they're going to talk, the way they're going to express themselves is going to in some ways feel alien, but sitting with Carolyn and talking to her, once you kind of just adjust to that, to the lingo being a little bit different, or the way of the mannerisms and way of expressing, once you kind of, those are just kind of like the surface aesthetics, and then you hear about their life, especially someone like Carolyn that's so articulate and sharp, and that was fantastic.
Yes.
It's fantastic to be able to talk to her. So
Yes.
I am in a privileged role at this church to be able to talk to so many people that I otherwise would just like be hiding in my hermit hole and not engaging with.
Got to get you out of that hermit hole.
We do.
Yeah.
Thank you. Keep at it, I guess. he said in fear. All right. Well, that's it for this episode of the Red Mountain Community Church podcast. You can follow Red Mountain Community Church on Instagram and Facebook, where you can also leave us comments and suggestions to help make the show better. Also, be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you are listening so you don't miss out on the next episode. In the meantime, I'm Peter Franson.
And I'm Hallie Carl.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on Sunday.